that you can leave the names out to protect the innocent, as they say?
Oh, there were cases that turned out to be funny where defendants would stand up and say the most outrageous things. I remember one trial where a brilliant criminal defense attorney, one of the best defense attorneys I ever saw, constantly referred to his client throughout the case as Mr. Guilty. He just got it stuck in his head somewhere, and from the beginning of the case to the end of it, he called his client Mr. Guilty, and the defendant, of course, is looking up at him all the time thinking, what are you doing to me? Watching that happen.
Did you ever have to use that gavel, like clear the court, just like you see on television, on Perry Mason and Owen Marshall and all that?
You know, I never used a gavel.
You just use your foot like you do in volleyball.
Well, there's a way of handling a case file that the people know that it's over, and so instead of hammering the tabletop with a gavel, I'd slap the file over to the other side, and they knew it was over.
So reality is a
little
little different than what you see on television, on Judge Judy and all that stuff.
Well, the bigger the gavel, the smaller the judge. Yeah.
Now, to convert over, you were a CFO for the California State Railroad Museum Foundation. Wow. That's another position I didn't know about. You want to tell the masses a little bit about that?
Well, the Railroad Museum, I hope that all of you have been or are planning to go. It's really, I believe it's the best railroad museum in the country. I've been to almost all of them. And the foundation that supports it, that supplies about 50 to 60% of the annual budget for the museum, has a $2.6 million a year budget and a it depends on the market each day, $2.5 to $2.8 million endowment that's invested for the benefit of the museum. I've been doing that for 5 years. It's really been outstanding. The budget management is very hands-on, and the oversight of the investment funds has been very rewarding, and it's taught me a lot about investing and the decisions that are made. And what we've been doing is supporting the museum, giving them the opportunity to purchase equipment or develop exhibits. Some of it is very mundane. I mean, we bought them a $600,000 air conditioner that would have taken months for the state to supply, but because the foundation is independent, we were able to just put it on a truck and deliver it. So working with the museum and the people who support that has been really terrific, very enjoyable, very rewarding.
So you never got a chance to run on a train because it says railroad in the title.
They don't let us run the trains.
Oh,
no.
the hat that the engineers wear and things like that?
No, we get to go out and climb around on them. There are some benefits. We get to go see some of the equipment, and I've gone out with the curators of the museum to recover pieces of equipment from one place or another. That's always very exciting. But no, we don't get to drive the trains.
I was just kidding.
Yeah.
But what's the comparison, the similarities of being a world-class judge that you've been and the office that you're running for as treasurer? Are there some similarities and differences?
Well, sure, because as a judge, you don't directly handle people's money. You're making decisions that affect people's money all the time. The biggest carryover from being a judge is decision making and being comfortable with making a decision and going ahead based on your analysis, your research and analysis. And then as a side effect of being a judge and having the opportunity to be in other organizations has been to develop leadership and to bring, and so when I win and I become the treasurer or tax collector, I'll bring with me a substantial background of leadership experience, and that's going to be a critical factor in managing that office.
I noticed that you're incredibly, can be very emotional, because I've seen you at volleyball games. But then on the opposite side, be able to set the emotions aside, and be a very serious person versus, me that's, off the charts emotional. Do you think that's something that can definitely help you in your position as this officer?
Well, of course, it's different being an announcer, a gym announcer at a volleyball game where you're trying to fire up a crowd and fire up the girls and get everybody involved. But in a way, when you're leading an office, and one of the significant things that the treasurer tax collector has to do is he has to manage his own office of about 40 people and lead them and encourage them. You may not be shouting into a microphone and pounding on the floor with your foot, but you're engaging in more subtle leadership goals. And certainly when I was a coach, everybody knew that I was loud and talkative as a coach, because you need to communicate with the kids. But when you were dealing with them one-on-one, it was a completely different leadership style. And I believe that one of the key things here is who's going to be able to lead this office staff and to keep moving them on the path that they've been on, to restore the public's trust in the integrity of the office and to lead the office in its relationships with other county offices. That's one of the leadership things that I think is going to be significant here.
You know, I think I'm an educated man, as educated as you are, but I don't think a lot of people know that it takes a leadership in knowing how to deal with people in the public like you are, which I've known the last two past people, and I've never known them as possibly a motivational speaker or being able to lead people that are under them, and you bring that to the table.
Well, I don't expect my staff to be a human wave leaping over the supervisor's desks during the meetings to emphasize our position, but I do expect that we'll be able to hold our own against the larger departments if there are issues, policy issues that are significant. And another, I think, along the lines of what you said, I think that there are a lot of people who don't have the faintest idea what the treasurer tax collector actually does, what the job is. And one of the main reasons that I'm running is because I think it's important to communicate to the people whose money is being managed by this office what it is that we actually do, and I don't think they know. For example, I think most people believe that the tax collector sets the tax bills, determines how much they have to pay. And so they come pouring into the tax collector's office, and the people who work at the counters in front are inundated with people complaining about their tax bills. Well, I hope to encourage those people to understand that the people are not actually mad at them, that we need to make sure that they get good advice about who to talk to in terms of the amount of money that's on their tax bill. I think that nobody knows what the treasurer does. I think most people believe that the treasurer actually sets the budget for the county because their experience with treasurers is, well, they're in charge of the budget. But that isn't correct. What the treasurer is in charge of is the investment portfolio of the county, which right now is about $1.6 billion, earning about $72 million a year of interest for the county. That's what the treasurer is actually in charge of. So part of what I hope to do, my outreach to the community, is to help them understand what it is that this office actually does. You know, there hasn't been an election for this office for over 30 years.
You didn't know that.
Maybe more than that. And it's not a very much discussed office, and I want to tell people what it's all about.
It'd be nice to know that when we write the checks to you, at least we know who the person is. And I've lived here almost 30 years, and I recognize a lot of names, but not a lot of faces, and I think you're going to be bringing that to the table.
Well, I never understood until a few years ago why it was that you wrote the check to a person. And the reason for that is that it isn't the county's money yet, because the tax collector, if you look at your tax bill closely, you'll see about a half a dozen other agencies that are on that tax bill. And so it isn't all the county's money, so that's why you don't write the check to the county of Ventura. You write